Hi, I'm Sonia Luna, CEO and founder of Aviva Spectrum. Today's interview is with Professor William Judge, and yes, I am going to call him Bill. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm glad that we met a few months back, and I was sitting in the audience listening to some of your research, and I said, I got to have him. He gets it in terms of corporate governance, and I saw some nuggets of, I call it my aha moments, where, you shared some, obviously some points in time, but it also, for me, what resonated the most is some key indicators of what the future might hold. So let's get into some of this studying that you've been doing in research. So what was the inspiration, first off, for studying the director selection process, and currently, what's the status of your research?
Well, I'm quite excited about this research project. My basic motivation for looking into this is I want to look at research topics that are of pressing importance to practitioners, yet theoretically interesting to academics. I think it's important to practitioners because, A, most of your listeners know that most boards today are comprised of non-executive directors. B, most boards are being asked to be more vigilant in their monitoring and service roles to the firm. And C, if the board doesn't have committed and capable non-executive directors, they just won't be effective. So I think it's important and instructive to understand how non-executive directors make their way onto the board. It's theoretically interesting to academics because there's very little systematic research that's been done on this process. It's interesting because unlike how executives are hired, non-executive directors they're invited to serve. They don't apply. So this raises this interesting conundrum in terms of, so if you don't apply, how does one get on the board? And how does the firm become aware of their prospects, and how do the candidates become aware of the firm? And then finally, there's this tension between non-executive directors are expected to be independent of the executives, but they also have this duty of loyalty, which is often translated to being loyal to the executives. So how do these non-executives balance their loyalty to the firm with independent oversight? In terms of the, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's that loyalty aspect resonated with me just now because I was sitting with a board member who's a board member of a public company, and his thoughts were, well, he got invited in terms of the selection process because the CEO was a former student. And long story short, the history of this company ended up that the board decided to fire him. But the loyalty was very clear to the board in this situation, in terms of my opinion, of, it was shareholder value that they needed to protect. And it was very clear that certain objective measurements weren't being met by certain executives. So it was a easier decision to make from an objective standpoint, but we are human beings. We're not like light switches, turn on and off our emotions whenever we need to. It's a tough situation in terms of that loyalty aspect.
It is a difficult job, and it's getting more difficult, and it's more and more in the fishbowl in terms of regulator scrutiny and the press. And I know you've had some programs about executive compensation and how you deal with cybersecurity, and directors are wrestling with all that. My basic idea is we need to understand how people get placed on this very important institution within a corporation so that boards can function better. So you also asked me about the current status of the project. Right now, I've completed an institutional review board process within my university, academics version of compliance. We need to comply with good practices so we protect the safety and confidentiality of the people that participate. I've conducted interviews with 3 director recruiters and 1 public director so far, and I expect to complete all the interviewing process within the next several months. So we're at the early stages of data collection.
Great. And if anybody wanted to participate, is it too far along that they couldn't ping you to try to participate, especially if they are currently serving on a public board?
Absolutely. I would absolutely love that. And basically anyone who is currently serving on a public board that would be interested and willing to talk to me about the process by which they join the board, I'd love to have them on the study.
Fantastic. Hopefully this will be a nice little plug. And I know our listeners would also appreciate what I call the nuts and bolts or practical advice on their interaction with the board of directors. So, for example, some of our audience listeners are in the compliance space. Some of them have the title of what's called Chief Audit Executive, and they're supposed to be a direct line to the audit committee, right? And they do their board packet, et cetera. But then there's this dotted line, right, the day-to-day operations to the CFO. And what advice would you give them in terms of, how to better interact with boards of directors?
Well, I have two responses to that question. First and foremost, an essential role of the board is monitoring of the corporation, and boards need more compliance experts serving on it. And for that reason, auditors and compliance experts and IT experts, a lot of boards are looking for that kind of expertise. And so the first very practical point would be consider not only providing information and guidance to boards, but consider maybe joining a board in the future. In terms of interacting with boards, however, I highlight the following few points. First, recognize that non-executive directors are walking a fine line between working with and being independent of top management. This is a really tricky balancing act. Basically, very little happens in any working relationship without trust, but they also take the Reagan invocation to trust but verify. And so the attitude is, I need to trust management, but I need to verify. And so compliance experts are in a great place to help them be trusting of management, but also verifying that that trust is well placed. Secondly, a lot of people have the view that the boardroom is a place where some big, important votes take place. In my experience as a director, and also in consulting with directors, they want to avoid votes at all costs. It's a much more subtle decision-making process. In general, when the board doesn't like where the organization's going, they ask questions, and then they ask more questions. So if you are a compliance expert making a presentation to a board, if they are asking you or management more and more questions, that's basically a signal that we have concerns here. Third, non-executive directors often struggle with when to take charge, when to partner with top management, and when to stay out of the way. There's a famous saying of nose in, fingers out. The idea there is that executives or non-executive directors need to be aware of what the firm is doing, where it's going, how it's performing, but to stay out of day-to-day managerial, tactical, and operational details. Not all directors honor that truism, and if you are presenting to directors and some director starts digging into the nits and gnats of operational details, that can be a form of dysfunction within the board and can be a very tricky place for not only the executives but the compliance expert who might be interacting with them.
And what I found also in practice, just from giving my own presentations to board members, is when there's a foundation of objective results, meaning this was the plan agreed to, right? So imagine it's a presentation on just the plan. Well, why do I even believe the plan is even accurate, it's reasonable, it's complete? Why do I believe that? Well, based on, in a very short way, bullet point, I based it on ABC standards, I based it on and this has been a collaborative effort. So the level of confidence in that presentation to board members goes way up when they know that it's not been a guessing game on my part to execute work, and then what I'm going to measure the results of that work product. And then at the end of the day, when the results are in, meaning effective, ineffective, etc., I go through that same scenario. The reason why the conclusion was reached by me and the team and the management has agreed to this conclusion as well is ABC, and oh, by the way, this other slide, which summarizes the 25 questions that the AICPA, which is considered the gold standard of guidance for audit committee members to measure my performance, I just was proactive and I just put the answers right here on the slide sheet. It creates a level of confidence saying, oh, she's already told me what I'm supposed to measure her on based on not what she thinks I need to measure on, but the AICPA already published a book called, Audit Committee Toolkit for Public Companies. And she's basing that. So it's, again, I try to go to the objective source because I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, which is, well, again, trust but verify. Well, how do I know that this is verifiable information, or how do I know that this is even, why should I place a high level of confidence on this information?
Those are some great insights, Sonia. I would qualify that by the notion that these non-executive directors are part-timers, and they might be spending 60 or 80 hours a year with this corporation, but the executives might be working 60 or 80 hours a week. And so they will never know in great depth as the executives do about how the organization operates, the ins and outs of the strategy. And so talking with directors, they often say, I feel like I'm drinking water from a fire hydrant. There's just so much information, and I don't have the context or the detail. And so compliance experts can go a long way towards giving them confidence that, there's been a lot of attention to low probability, high consequence events that speak up and hurt the organization. And compliance experts can be really helpful in helping to avoid future surprises. In general, boards don't like to be surprised.
Well, this has been, I really believe in it, a truly insightful interview, Bill, and I'm confident our listeners gained a lot of value from your perspective. Thank you, Bill, again for coming on our radio show.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is Sonia Luna, CEO and founder of Aviva Spectrum, signing off.